All right. So I got like really deep into that philosophy during Phoenix season, which was like October, November, okay, of 2024. Then I ran into this old woman, this beautiful old woman at the New Year's party. I'm at this New Year's party at a little farm here in Portugal, and this beautiful old woman says, I have an empty seat. Come sit next to me. And I sit down next to her and she asks me some things and I'm telling her some stuff. She's like in her 80s. She's the grandmother of somebody who's an adult who's there. And at some point she says to me, well, she asked me a question about one of my issues in life I was a little ambivalent about. And I said, yeah, I don't really. She said, how does your heart feel about it? How does your heart feel about that house you're thinking about buying, Tara? And I said, I don't really fall in love with houses before I buy them. It's like not my thing. And I talked to her about like negotiating, power and da 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 da. And she said, I hope this doesn't offend you, which, Lord, when an 80-something-year-old woman says, I hope this doesn't offend you, you buckle right on up, don't you? She said, I hope this doesn't offend you. But that seems like that feels old. That feels like an old story for you. She said, everything else that you've said to me today felt so true and present and active. And that thing about like, I don't really fall in love with houses before I buy them just feels old. And I received that in my spirit. And I saw that as an invitation to dissolve what was old, not just in my story about buying houses, but in anything that mattered to me, in any endeavor. I'm still doing it. New Year's was 11 days ago, and I'm still like, as I say things that feel a little struggly, I'm like, that feels old. And I began to that night, I began to dissolve that particular old story. And I also realized that I had been doing some dissolving all year, maybe all decade. I had been dissolving the addiction to business and commerce and the what I knew that was rooted in, because I think all of us, so many of us are addicted to business, not focused on, addicted to, because we're trying to use business to prove our worthiness or our exceptionalism. And we don't need to do that. Okay. You can't prove how worthy you are. I told a client recently, you can't pay me what I'm worth because I'm worth infinity. This ain't about that. Okay. I had been dissolving the need to create crises to get a break from my business obsession. I had been dissolving my overwork habit that I could see was rooted in avoiding other areas of life. I had been dissolving operating out of nervous system defense mode as like a primary way of being. I had been dissolving living for my business instead of my business serving my life, right? There are these very deep and conditioned drivers that lie beneath a bunch of the things that we think we want in our lives and our businesses. And what I discovered is that those things are actually causing the very mistakes that stop you from getting all the way into your empire era of ultra profitable, low hours, low stress business. Okay. So, and actually, as I was really reflecting because I didn't have much else to do for a while there. As I was reflecting, I was like, reflecting on my all time life wins and career wins. And I realized that they kind of were all about around the same couple things. Like my zone of genius wasn't what I had always been like integrating spirit and strategy, sure, but it was more specific than that. It was like translating other people's unique spirit and genius into intellectual property assets, into an engine that on its own, the content on its own, converts strangers into buyers, buyers into customers, customers into clients, right? And in that way, monetizing their genius into a very low or no hours engine of profit and transformation for people and brands who really should be on the A list but weren't. So during my Phoenix season and continuing, I dissolved a bunch of these things that were underlying the way I had been running my business that was outside of that specific zone of genius. And I invite you to try on, do any of these feel resonant for you? Okay. Come into the chat and let me know. Yes, resonates, or just yes, or resonates, or whatever. Here are some of the inner business desire drivers I dissolved. I dissolved the need to be in perpetual freaking motion, the need to effort, the need for martyrdom, to create programs that were good for other people that I actually hated delivering. I dissolved the need for savior syndrome, the need to prove I'm exceptional. I dissolved a lot of fears, fear of running out of time or money or energy or dying. That started to feel really old. The fear of triggering other people with the audacity, Keisha's word, of my vision. That started to feel really old. I don't need to be afraid of that anymore. The need to feel important to lots of people, just doing the most, the need to do the most, creating too much content, over delivering, offer stuffing. I felt old. And this one's a little nuanced, but tell me if it resonates in the chat.